Oh, hi there. I was just editing one of my podcasts here. I'm Dylan James Weaver, but you can call me Dylan, and this is the Wad Fam Chalk Pod. Hey, let's see how this thing sounds. Hold in! Okay, so it needs a little more work, but that's the exciting part, because you never know what you'll discover along the way. Oh, don't take my word for it, though. You can find out for yourself when you listen to today's Wad Fam Chalk Pod. Hello and welcome to the Wad Fam Chalk Pod. I'm Dylan Weaver.
And I'm Andrew Sabo.
And, Andrew, what are we going to do about Halloween?
I don't know, Dylan. I really don't know. I have a feeling Focus has some answers that they will try and give me.
Yeah, perhaps.
But I'm feeling a bit cold towards their agenda these days, so I don't know how I'm gonna feel about it.
Oh man. So yeah, that was not just a general question, folks. That is the title of episode 45 of Adventures in Odyssey. Yeah. It's an episode that originally aired October 22nd of 1988. Interestingly, not the Halloween episode, because they had an episode come out a week later on the 29th, which would be, closer, and it was not that one. So, who knows what they were thinking?
Yeah, isn't that kind of anti what this episode is? To have a Halloween episode? That's not this Halloween episode?
Well, I mean, the Halloween episode they put out was not Halloween at all.
Oh, okay.
It's just a different episode of the show. The point I was making is just that this one could have aired closer to Halloween than what it did.
Oh, they were just trying to give people time to plan their parties.
Yeah, maybe. It then, for the, following that, aired most years around Halloween, from 91 to 96. And then they took it off the air, until it was released as part of The Lost Episodes.
Oy, oy, oy.
An album that I listened to quite a bit.
I'm so sorry.
Buddy, it felt like a treasure.
It did feel like a treasure, for sure. And that treasure is, riddled with smallpox.
Oh, man. But it's got Wit as an archaeologist on the cover, so you gotta get it.
Oh, yeah. No, I remember seeing that album cover when it came out, being like, I've never heard these. I'll never hear these. I've got to.
Yeah. No, it's very good.
Very compelling, for me at least.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
the only way they really successfully push their agenda.
Oh, man. It's an episode written and directed by Paul McCusker.
Wow. Okay.
Look, we know he doesn't have a perfect track record.
No.
It is still always a bummer when... Yeah.
When they drag... when Novacom Man gets dragged down by corporate leaders. Because after finishing today's episode, looking at the Lost Episodes album, I decided to listen to the beginning, of Pamela Has a Problem, or Pamela's Problem, or whatever.
Why? Why, Andrew?
Well,
why?
because I've never heard it.
Oh.
Yeah. I just know that it exists, and I'm avoiding it. It's the same thing with Ties That Bind, where it's like, I've heard enough about it that tells me it's bad that I never want to go there ever. I
don't know. I just can't, we can't touch Pamela Has a Problem. I don't know what sucks about it. I have avoided it for years.
Exactly. So, and today is not the day. I did not finish that episode. The reason I bring it up is that they give a lot of disclaimers at the beginning about why they made this episode, because Focus basically was twisting their arm to put out, Hot Topic-esque episodes of Adventures in Odyssey where Wit gets to, spew the heart of Focus on the Family on everybody.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Now that I do want to listen to.
Yeah, so, and as, again, I did not listen to the actual episode. I just listened to that at the beginning. I was like, oh, that's actually kind of interesting. And they do that, I believe, I want to say 2.5 times. They say, listen to this with your parents. This is about a mature topic. This is because of Focus on the Family.
Right, so, I want to hear that. I want to hear the, why did this episode, why behind the scenes was this made? But interesting.
That's why I'm like, I feel bad that Paul McCusker, got drug into this. But also, at the same token, I don't know who wrote Pamela Has a Problem, but I feel like if it's as bad as it was probably written by Phil Lawler.
Like I said, we do not know about that episode. We cannot litigate it. It was written and directed by Paul McCusker.
Oh no!
But I truly, all I know is what that episode is dealing with.
Yeah.
I do not remember. I mean, and I can project on it how it was handled, but I do not know the details.
No, certainly. Anyway, point being, the fact that they brought it up, I feel like this episode deserved the same amount of disclaimer. As far as, this is just Focus being y'all need to worry about Halloween. I mean, but there was none. There was no part of that was really addressed.
Sure. It's I mean, we can get into it in a moment. Context wise, we don't have a promo, but I can address the fact we do have a couple cast members of note. A guy named Travis Kemmer's playing Leonard. He's never been in any other Odyssey, but he's here as Leonard. I think that's actually a pretty good performance, all things considered. Ed Renfield is being voiced by Will Ryan. I feel like fairly transparently.
Yeah.
And in a very, I think the closest Will Ryan I could pin it to is his Officer Orion. I feel like it gets a little Eugene, a little Officer Orion. It's just him not doing a particularly exaggerated character.
Yeah.
So, and then we have the pastor being played by Chuck Bolte of George Barkley fame.
Yes.
And yes,
Stunning
another Odyssey pastor.
Pastor voice.
Yeah.
And okay, does Phil Lawler voice the elder that is not happy with Wit's party?
No. That's Will Ryan, the guy who's who's upset. He's
Okay.
not an elder.
Okay.
But yeah, I think it's also interesting to address they never did a Halloween episode after this point. This is the episode about Halloween, and that is that.
That is very Focus.
Well, but they also pulled it from the air.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the thing we do have to address is, the lost episodes, part of the reason they were lost is, they stopped airing them. They weren't actually lost. For whatever reason, they decided, no, we're not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
And so that's, the pull from the official guide, because it has a little bit about the lost albums, and about the lost episodes album, and it says that it kind of gives explanations as to why each of the episodes were lost.
Oh, okay.
And for this one specifically, it says, celebrating Halloween is one of those subjects that challenges Christian parents. We wrote the episode to give parents a few alternative ideas, hoping that there was a middle ground here. As it turned out, parents holding different views on all sides didn't approve of our position, so we just stopped airing it.
So you managed to upset everybody.
Yeah, and I don't. This episode is obviously not without flaw. I don't think it comes away super cleanly. However, I
don't
get
think
what
it deserves the amount of blowback it got, though.
That's kind of what I'm saying too. Where I'm like, I appreciate them. I appreciate them trying to take a middle road approach.
Yeah,
I think that they maybe, I don't know that it's the correct approach, but I like that it's not
Wit and the church versus the town.
Right. Like this episode, I feel like the closest analogy to it is the Living Nativity. Mm-hmm. In that it is an episode that has a specific message, and the point of the episode is kind of like, hey, we're presenting you, the audience, options that you could do in your town. Mm-hmm. However, that one is, I feel like, targets that way harder, where this one kind of like, I don't know, it walks a little bit of a line and is not so...
Yeah, it's not so in your face about it. There's not as much of a call to arms until you get to the discussion questions, which I will cite.
Yeah. All right. We need to
get into it.
Yeah. The only other thing I wanted to bring up, Chad Reiser is the voice of Brad in this episode. Mm-hmm. He is also the voice of Monty and Digger.
Oh, okay.
So we know him from those things.
That's fair.
And I think this is might be his only appearance as this particular character, but is obviously a kid that they keep going back to, especially in these early episodes, as we've talked about, where there aren't really, like, the kid characters are fully interchangeable, and it's just like, who's nearby? Great.
Yeah. So the episode begins with Chris looking for a rake in her yard. It's a bit of a skit, and it's not nearly as long as the other ones. I'm glad that they've tapered off from, like, the minute and a half before the intro skits.
I mean, it is still over 2 minutes till the episode starts.
Oh, yes. No. That part hasn't changed. But they've dispersed it a bit differently.
Sure. It's not quite as heavy. Chris doesn't have a trivia question up top.
Yeah, exactly. We've come a long way in the 2 years time or whatever that we've been covering.
It's not, Andrew, all the episodes we're covering are within the first year of Odyssey.
Oh yeah, because they put out one a week and this is 46.
Right.
Okay.
That was kind of the concept of what we were doing here. Was we're talking about Odyssey Year 1 through the lens of Connie.
That's an excellent point, and I intentionally made that mistake so you could remind the audience of our purpose here.
Well done, Andrew.
You're
really good. This is a quality performance on your part.
You know what? I'm also great at looking for rakes, unlike Chris.
Wow.
So she's looking
Shots fired. Take that,
yeah,
Chris.
Take that, Chris. Open your eyes, all right? So she's looking for a rake. She goes into presumably garage shed or whatever, and then roll intro, which is cool, fun bit that they do, obviously. You get a Wit intro, and then we cut back to Chris talking about the truth about Halloween.
Yep.
And some clever ways that Wit has for us to not remember its meaning or whatever.
Yeah. I will say she talks about like, she waxes poetic about fall, and I will just say, Odyssey in fall sounds so lovely.
Oh yes, apples
honestly,
from Tom's
though,
farm.
Is there, like, okay, I am, this will show my own biases because I don't like spring, but like,
Fair.
every season sounds pretty good in Odyssey. Like, I'm like, Odyssey Summer, we've got, like, tree houses and Trickle Lake. Odyssey Fall, it's, like, beautiful and there's leaves. Odyssey Winter is Snow Day episode. Odyssey Spring is, I guess, the tornado.
Yeah. Yeah, as spring doesn't have much support in the Odyssey world. But yeah, I think it's just the quaint small town
Right,
vibe.
yeah. It's the Stars Hollow of it all.
Yes, exactly. But it does it well, and it does sound delightful.
Yeah.
Like, I think Small Town Fall is way better than Small Town Spring. Or Small Town Summer, honestly.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, but I feel like fall is always the best.
True. I mean, bias is fully showing.
Right.
It's my favorite season, so.
Yeah. That's why we have a podcast together.
Exactly. That's the only reason.
Yeah, we both love fall. Our opinions on everything else are different, but fall.
That's what happened
we
in
have
South
unity
Africa.
over. It was
We
winter.
fell for each other. Waxing poetic.
Okay, so we open on
Church elders.
Ed Renfield has gone to the church elder board to express his frustration at Halloween.
Yeah, just the fact that it exists, really.
Yep.
And it's, I mean, did you hear this argument much growing up? Like, Halloween's super satanic, you know, you really gotta, like, you shouldn't participate in it at all. Because I didn't really.
I maybe did a little bit. It was not a Halloween family. Honestly, maybe this episode is the little bit that I remember growing up. Although this episode came, I feel like this episode wasn't released on an album until 2007, at which point, like, I'm still listening to Odyssey, but it's not quite the same as, like, growing up with it.
Yeah, that's fair.
Because I remember when the church library got the lost episodes. Like, that was a big deal. So
Me too. You were probably the reason I couldn't rent it.
You know what, Andrew? Fair. Yeah. So I didn't have a particularly bad. Yeah, I feel like we weren't particularly stringent on Halloween one way or the other. I did a couple years of trick-or-treating. Man, did I do more than 1 year? I for sure know I did a year of trick-or-treating.
Wow. That was not, like, a thing on your radar? Like, trick-or-treating was... I mean, go into it. Please tell your story.
Well, so what I was going to say is I'm sure I did more than 1 year of trick-or-treating, but I only know of one costume I ever had. Which
That's fair. I'm sure you probably went, like, a couple times when you were, like, a kid, like, really little.
Yeah, probably not. Probably not when I was real little.
Like, when you were 4 or 5, really?
I doubt it.
Around?
Remember, Andrew, I'm the oldest.
Oh, that's fair.
So, like, you would have had... There's maybe some precedent there. Mm-hmm. I feel like I did it. I went as a quote-unquote Indian.
Uh-oh.
It's fine. We can't cancel 6-year-old Dylan. It's just not happening.
True. No,
he also had
here.
a pirate-themed birthday party. What do you want?
Yeah, no, I did that too.
That's.
I dressed up like Jack Sparrow, which is very offensive to Johnny Depp.
I'm okay with offending Johnny Depp, I think. All right, so Ed Renfield, has decided that the church elder board needs to denounce Halloween.
Yep. It's very important. He cites all of the classic problems with Halloween, such as razor blades and apples and drugs in brownies.
Yep.
Or actually, his words are brownies with drugs in them.
Correct.
Because, yeah, that's fair.
You gotta,
does anybody put anything other than weed in brownies?
No.
Okay.
No. Also, can you imagine, just for an instance...
Meth brownies? My mind went there.
If somebody handed a child a pot brownie while trick-or-treating...
You know...
Like, what is...
Yeah.
Like, there is no evidence of razors and apples ever happening.
Yeah.
And true of, like, most things. Generally, the whole, like, trick-or-treat candy, like, maybe it's poison thing, is the general consensus is that started after someone replaced cyanide in Tylenol bottles.
Oh.
And 7 people died from that in, like, 82, I want to say. And kind of following that with the satanic panic stuff, rumors started to surface about Halloween candy.
As the source of all evil.
Yep. And to the extent where this is not an experience I had, but is hilarious, there was apparently certain towns, the hospital would set up stations to X-ray all candy on Halloween night. Like, you could go trick-or-treating and then go over to the hospital and they'd X-ray it for free.
It's so nice of them. I don't know what
amazing.
injecting your food with, like, X-rays does to it, but that feels like very expensive.
I mean, I think it's probably just power, right?
Is that how that works? But I thought it had to be printed onto something, essentially.
No, I think they're just. I think basically they're metal detectoring.
Oh, okay, that's fair.
Like, I think that's the general thing. In fact, I don't know why. Maybe metal detectors weren't a thing at the time. Who knows? Anyways, Renfield is mad about Halloween, and I love that he brings this up at the church, and they're like, "Who cares?"
Yeah.
Like, isn't it harmless? And he goes like, well, how can we say that something that promotes witchcraft and demon worship is harmless?
It should appall us.
And I'm like, is that what it does?
That is like the that is the definition of making a mountain out of a molehill. Or it's like, they're, undeniably, potentially problematic origins. It's important to acknowledge them. Getting rid of the entire thing, just lighting it on fire because it's, like, remotely discolored from your idea is,
right.
Well, it's certainly a take, and unfortunately, those at Focus on the Family and people that support it really haven't gone away from those tactics.
I'm like, you know what? We also shouldn't have Christmas trees if this is your argument. Like, what do you want from us, guys?
Yeah, it's celebrating a pagan holiday. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I thought they were gonna go with a like.
But also
Muertes.
Halloween, not a pagan holiday.
No,
Halloween is a church holiday.
Exactly. That was the thing that
like, it's
this
a church,
episode illuminated
it's a church
for me.
that we don't necessarily agree with anymore, or the writers of this show do not. But, like, Halloween started as a Christian holiday.
Yeah, and they address it in the episode. They say it's, like, in preparation for All Saints' Day, which is great.
Yeah, a lot of my Halloween trivia comes from this episode. There are some lines here that are glued in my mind. Yeah, but I don't know. So, yeah, it kind of then ends.
Yeah.
And
they go to the pastor. The pastor's like, what?
Well, he's at the elder board meeting. Like, he's already there, right?
No, that's what I'm saying, is that, like, the conversation shifts to the pastor, and they're like, what do you think? And he's like, well, let's pray together and ask God, see what he says. Which, was, again, a surprisingly middle-of-the-road take for Focus when I was listening to it. I was like, what's he gonna say? Where's this gonna go? And he said, let's pray about it. I was like, bullet dodged.
Yeah. And then we go over to the
to Wit's End.
To Wit's End, and Wit couldn't be at the elder meeting, but we find out the pastor then preached a sermon against Halloween on the Sunday.
That must have been one prayer circle, I'll tell you what. Like, the spirit must have moved violently.
I'm just like, boy, does nothing sound less appealing to me than a extremely topical sermon in that regard.
Yep. Yep.
Where it's like, this is not planned. I just decided to stand up on a podium and rant against Halloween.
Yeah. To
thing that the Bible
reactions.
doesn't talk about.
Yeah. Yeah. If anything, it's kind of, like you said, it's Christian. Like,
yeah,
there's gotta be something salvageable here.
Right. The argument I guess the episode is posing is maybe we shouldn't celebrate this stuff. Because, maybe it should be, like, more of an auspicious day than a celebratory one. But, like, I also, like, nobody is...
I don't see a lot of demons running around these days as far as Halloween costumes are concerned.
Well, my perspective is, like, witches, ghosts, zombies, all, like, the Halloween stuff are just, like, Easter Bunny Santa Claus. Mm-hmm. Like, it's iconography tied to a holiday. Nobody is, like, doing it to represent what they, like... Yeah, nobody's doing it representative of the original or whatever. Like, it's... I don't know. Well, I don't know. Are you familiar with, like, Easter Bunny argument as well? Because that was a thing... That was, like, weirdly a thing that came up, like, once or twice growing up, which was, like, we shouldn't have the Easter Bunny.
No, actually. No, that was never a thing. I just never really was into it. The Easter Bunny
is like it's because it's, once again, we're going, like, pagan holiday. Like, we've got, like, fertility and whatnot, and rabbit's a sign of that. But then, like, the fact that the rabbit lays eggs is somehow demonic. Who knows? It's just, right.
Those
Satanic
mall pictures
Panic
do
stuff
not look good, though. Like... A mall Santa looks way less like a demon than a mall Easter Bunny.
I'll take your word for it. Yeah. So Brad and Leonard come in to Wit's End, and they're like, hey, Wit, can we
can't go.
We can't go to Halloween now because the pastor preached a sermon, and now we're all up in arms about it. We want you to, like, get the ban lifted.
Yeah, and see if you can do something about it. Like, they've mustered up the courage to go talk to Wit, essentially.
Yep. As they, as children, understand that John Avery Whittaker runs the town of Odyssey.
Fair.
Yeah, no, I'm impressed that they caught on.
Well, kids pick up on things adults miss all the time.
That was very John Avery Whittaker of you.
Yes.
He then, like, affirms their parents' choice.
Yep.
But is just like, hey, you should, like, go research this yourself.
Yeah.
Which I'm like, very cool. But I'm also like, if your parents don't want your kids dressing up as demons, are they cool with them reading about them?
Well, and I think it was to answer some of the question as to why their parents felt the way that they did. Because there was something from them where they were like, oh, we just don't understand. Like, what's the big deal? And that is the thesis of this episode of, like, somebody says stuff about Halloween that seems, harmless or normal, not particularly consequential, and then somebody goes, well, but actually, yada yada yada.
Yeah. I like the concept of, hey kids, go do research. Like, and then they come back and they recap the research they did, which is just like a fun story device.
Yeah,
like,
right?
Honestly could
Arthur.
have leaned into this more. Like,
I wish they did.
It's well done.
Yeah.
And right, the whole concept of, like, Wit wants them to understand why their parents made this decision, which I think rocks.
Yeah.
Like, I love that idea, which is like, hey, let's assume a positive intent. Why do you think that your parents made this decision for you to not, to not have to, like, to not do Halloween? Like, why was that decision made? Let's not just, like, be like, their parents, there's supreme authority in your life, and so, whatever they say goes, no questions asked. It's like, he's like, look, like, they're going to make the decision at the end of the day, but you can at least understand why they're making the decision. And I'm like, I really love that, like, parenting strategy from a man, who is not their parent. But
yeah. No, and again, it is a very, I think, consciously tapered intervention from Wit in this episode that is more, early stages of Wit compared to, what modern Odyssey looks like, where he would have done something very different.
Yeah, he would have sent them on, an imagination station adventure to see, like, some Halloween celebration where, like, a baby was sacrificed.
Oh, yeah, that'd be... Yeah. And a little girl gets possessed by a demon and, like, burns down a firehouse or something.
Burns down a firehouse is very funny.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so as they're recapping it, they go through this whole, like, it was, Halloween coming from Hallow, like, hallowed be thy name, and Ween being, like, an evening thing.
Yeah.
So it's like, so it's Hallow's Eve or the day before. And the one kid, he goes, Christmas Eve is the day before Christmas, so Hallow's Eve is the day before Hallow. And that was, like, that is a line glued in my mind. Day before Hallow, just that line reading has stuck with me. And I
can see why.
Yeah, it's an episode, like...
And that's the thing where it's like, there are elements of it that really do shine. And, like, I don't hate Wit's interactions. Granted, at the end of the day, based on my own personal biases and the way I look at the world, like, of course I'm not going to land on the same side as Focus on the Family on this topic. But they could have done a lot worse of a job.
Yeah.
And done a lot more damage to, like, characters if, say, Wit was playing the role of... Ed Renfield. Renfield, thank you. Like, squinting my eyes at the wiki. Is that an L?
Yeah.
Like, I could see it just as easily being, like, Wit coming to the church being like, kids should not be enjoying this right now. But instead, he's a weird mediator position, which I think is good for him.
Right. And so, yeah, the kids, like, get it. They understand why, like, their parents don't want them to participate. They're still sad about it. Mm-hmm. But they're... Yeah. And it's at this point, right, that the conversation happens where the kids are like, look, like, we understand that we shouldn't do Halloween, but why not have a party anyways?
Mm-hmm. It's still a day, like, we can do stuff.
Right. Like, let's
intentionally glorifying to God, essentially.
Yeah. Which, once again, fan of.
Good take.
Do I think that it was evil for you to participate in Halloween? Not for a second.
No.
Do I think that, like, having an alternative party, which is more God-centered, is a cool idea? Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
This is then the point where halfway through the episode, Connie arrives.
Yeah.
And yeah, she's going off about Halloween, and she brings up that Brad already talked her ear off about it, which I think is very funny and great kid stuff. Of like, of course they're immediately gonna repeat that. And she's basically just like, I don't understand why this is such a big deal. And Wit's like, well, I mean, here's my reasons. And she's like, yeah, but we don't actually believe any of that anymore. We're like, smarter than those people and whatnot. And like, we've, moved past that. And Wit's like, smarter, maybe not, probably not wiser. And I think, I don't know, it taps into that whole like chronological snobbery, which is the idea that it's like we are living in the most enlightened time ever, and that everyone before us was very dumb and held all the wrong opinions and all this stuff that is, I think, a really bad thing that culture can easily slip into. And so where I'm frustrated with Wit's take here, it was one of those things where I'm just like, I heard it come out of Connie's mouth and I was like, Connie, why did you have to say that? Because now Wit is just gonna scold you about it.
Yeah, no, like, why did you put your face right into his fist?
Uh-huh.
No, yeah, definitely. And, yeah, like, Wit mentions property and vandalism a bit, and I'm like, man, you really did just get, like, for somebody who doesn't have a television, you must get really spooked by the news.
Yeah, where I'm just like, we can condemn...
Unless they're calling, like, TPing a house vandalism, which may be, but, like...
We can condemn all of this stuff separate from the holiday.
Precisely.
Precisely. But it's just... I mean, it's this whole, like, the... Like, 90... Yeah, this is 88. But, like, the 90s era Christianity thing of, like... Their... And obviously it continues through till today. Mm-hmm. But the, like, lack of a middle ground, which is the, like, anything that could possibly have negative connotation we must flee from is, just so temperance, frustrating.
Huh? Jesus commands temperance? Meaning measured responses?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's brutal. But, I mean, again, we speak to it being somewhat products of it, and this is also representative of kind of an extreme. Like, even growing up, if I heard this, I would be like, man, why don't they just, like, go trick-or-treating? Because, like I said, like, I grew up very much in the church and very much, adhering to what that culture was saying, and there was no real heavy-handed condemnation of Halloween or, like, trick-or-treating or really anything like that. In a way that I know some people did experience.
Right. This is what I was going to say is I think I finally I finally figured out what my experience growing up with this was, which is never being a house that was anti-Halloween, but having friends who were in houses that were anti-Halloween and just being aware of it as a stance through them.
Yeah.
And so we weren't, like, gung-ho about Halloween, but, like, we always had candy and sat out and did costumes a couple times. And, like, it was not, like, this big event, but it wasn't something that we avoided. But I definitely knew people in my life whose parents did, like, have them avoid it and whatnot. Yeah.
Well, and it is like, I think my parents would have looked at me funny if I wanted to dress up like a demon or something like that. But left to my own devices, I think the riskiest thing I chose was Mako from Legend of Korra, and that was, like, my second to last Halloween costume. No, that was my last Halloween costume. No? I think it was my last. Yeah, I think it was my last Halloween costume. I trick-or-treated religiously. I probably did the exact wrong thing, but... Listen, I mean, in my neighborhood, like, suburbia, there were a lot of houses, a lot of neighbors I knew. There were some pretty solid, consistent candy halls. Like, I had it down to, by elementary school, I had it down to enough of a science that, like, I could hit 2 or 3 neighborhoods in a night if I get my parents to cooperate and drive me over to Nathan's development.
Oh, wow. Yeah, no. It was always just the people on our block.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, we did not venture far at all. Connie, Wit... As Wit's, like, going through the thing, he brings up that, like, jack-o'-lanterns or pumpkins with twisted faces carved into them, and I'm like, I cannot believe that we have a man who is angry about jack-o'-lanterns. That is the funniest thing.
I mean, yeah, those gourds, they really have it coming, I suppose. They've angered God.
Man, and it just, his thing is, like, the focus of the night is on things that are bad. And I'm like, the focus of the night is on, like, costumes and candy and, like, genuinely, like, it's a cool community thing.
Yes,
like, I like that aspect of it
thing.
A lot.
Mm-hmm.
I like that it's just, like, on your street and it's like you see your neighbors and like whatever, like that stuff rocks. It's like where I'm like, I would love to be like, in the somewhat distant future, but like I'd love to have a house that kids like come trick or treat at. Like that sounds delightful.
It's a really good time. It's delightful.
Connie's just like, all this seems like so much fuss about nothing, and I agree. Then Renfield walks in, and he's mad, and Connie leaves, and he goes off about this party that Whit's putting on.
And he is completely closed off to anything that Whit has to say. Fully.
And I think it's really interesting that, like, the villain of this episode is an overprotective parent.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it's that thing where I'm like, they are really trying to play the middle of the road, and I do respect it.
Well, because, again, when faced with this conflict, Whit's response is basically, well, this is what we're doing. This is, the mindset that we're operating out of in order to make it happen. And this is what it's focused on. Like he says, goodness and holiness. Like those are pretty objectively positive things. But he ultimately says, I can't make anybody come. Like it's entirely up to you. If you don't want to celebrate, then you certainly don't have to come, but we would love for you to be there.
Yeah. And Renfield's like, no, you gotta shut down this party. My kids are being left out.
My kids can't wear masks in school. Okay. They get too warm.
And he's like, you're asking people to compromise on their convictions. And Whit's like, this is, once again, we serve a smug Whit. This is Whit, like, he's just like, oh, the smugness is so strong.
Oh, it drips.
Where he's just like, you think, like, goodness and, the Bible are, bad things? Well, that's on you. And... but then I like his point, which is like he's like we should show our children that to work things for good rather than just flee from evil.
Exactly, which is
and I'm like, oh, I dig
point.
that. I dig that message. Once again, like I think that this is I don't love this as like the topic that they're tackling this in, but I do like a lot of the text of this episode.
Exactly. And that's why it's so conflicting.
Yep. Yeah, that's why I feel like we're just kind of talking in circles. But yeah. And then we jump to the party. Tom's having a blast. The kids are dressed up as Bible characters. We've got a kid who's not wearing a mummy costume but a Lazarus costume, which is funny. They've banned the word Halloween.
Yeah, and a kid corrects Tom, and he's like, oh goodness, I'm so sorry. And then the pastor comes up and says it, and Tom's like, you can't say that here.
Yeah, I do. It's ridiculous, but like, it's fun.
And I thought it was a fun bit, and like, it shows like everybody's having a good time. It's very wholesome, and then Whit basically gets on a table and tells everybody to group up and talk about why they love God.
Right, like he does. This feels so youth group.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Where it's obviously it's families, not like just pure kids, but like he basically like is like, hey, fun and games time. We're taking a break for like essentially like an altar call and some like we're gonna sing and. Yeah, just spend time in the Bible, and it's I mean, it is what it is. Like I don't think it's I have no issues with it.
No,
I don't think
not.
I don't think that like I think if the event where those events get dodgy is when they're like sold as one thing, but then have that like hard
left
pivot,
hook.
and like you kind of like. Put people on the spot and whatnot, but this is just like it's a bunch of families from the churches who are there, and
clearly it's like people that are comfortable with this
concept, like they know what they signed up for,
exactly,
which I appreciate, and I love Whit like calling out like, hey, if there are any kids who don't have families, just like join up with someone. It's just nice.
Yeah, it's a really sweet, I don't know. It's a very kind, smug wit that I'm enjoying more and more. You know, he's not perfect, don't get me wrong, like any old man, but he's he's definitely got a lot to love, and that comes back to the wonderful album artwork that depicts him in his true, slightly heavier set form.
Yeah. He also does, like, weirdly during this moment take a time to, like, address the fact that demons are very real, which is just like just a funny, like, shoehorn into
Demons are spooky. Halloween's about demons. Let's talk about love. Very youth group. Incredibly youth group.
Oh, it's so youth group. And then it's the next day.
Yeah, and Connie comes in with a toothache.
Yep.
She asked Whit about how the party went, and he's like, kind of smug, honestly. He's like, oh, I think it went off pretty well. Or it would have seemed more authentic for him to be like, wow, it was like it was a great hit, and I was really surprised considering it was the first time. But yeah, he says the party went well, and then Connie talks about her evening, and she went as Snow White with some of her friends to a party, and it was weird, and some guys were dressed up like, what would she say, like zombies or something?
No, this is great. She says they were dressed up as witches.
Oh!
Which I love. I love guys dressed as witches. That rocks.
I'm here for it. I'm very here for it. Maybe I'll go as a witch this year for Halloween.
Yeah, Connie dressed as Snow White, which I love.
Very pure, intentionally. You know, we've got to keep this character around. We got to show she's got integrity. You know, no slutty nurse for 15-year-old Connie.
Yeah, thank God. Yeah, and...
Oh, and then the guys were mean, and then she went home and ate a bunch of bags of candy.
And got a toothache, and maybe a cavity.
Yep.
And it's totally... Yeah, I'm just like, the interactions between Whit and Connie are the weak point of this episode for me. Where I'm just like, man, they are like Connie is so clearly being written as just like character who does the things that are wrong.
Yeah.
To contrast Whit, who does the things that are good.
Yeah.
And that's the purpose she serves at this point in the show. She's, the stand-in for all those heathens out there that, we must pity. But and she's like, maybe I'll come next year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Connie wants to come next year, and it seems like this is the new thing that they're gonna do. Yeah, and that's where the episode ends.
No, the episode actually ends with Chris jumping into a leaf pile.
Oh, honestly, I abandoned ship before then. Honestly, I turned off the episode.
Worth the listen.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. Maybe we'll get Nathan to replicate it someday.
I don't know. There's too many leaves at this current time.
Oh man, but that's I mean,
that's what we're gonna do about Halloween, Dylan.
Yeah,
that's the answer.
What we're gonna do is like pivot and have like a different party and like try and bring the community together in a different way. And I
am here for it. It's just not in a specific way.
Right. I'm like, I think that this episode incorrectly targets Halloween.
Yeah.
I think that the rest of what it has to say is pretty good.
Oh, yeah, and the way that it goes about solving the problems, literally with kids learning about it and coming up with creative solutions, like, that is textbook, like, affirming, and that's just excellent training for kids, like, critical thinking and problem-solving abilities, like, so valuable. My big plug for this episode is just, don't buy into the hype. Do what you want on Halloween. You know, if you want to trick or treat, if you want to dress up and do the whole 9 yards, I say go for it. But if
I mean,
you're
unless
not
you're
it,
if you're a child.
Oh yeah, that's fair.
Or if you have children. If you're an adult listening to this, which I hope you are, go have fun at your slutty Halloween party.
Yeah.
Let loose.
Do what you like.
Yeah.
But I would say more so what I was trying to get at is, like, my best Halloween experiences have not been the Halloween parties I've gone to. It's been the people that I just hung out with and did something fun that was somewhat Halloween related on that night.
All right. Share a Halloween memory, Andrew. A positive one here. Let's go out on that. We'll each share a Halloween memory or two.
So growing up, my grandmother, like my grandparents on my dad's side would come in on Halloween, and they would do trick-or-treating at our house, and it was always a big deal. They wanted to take pictures of us in our costumes, and, you know, being one of four and the middle child and everything, like, Colleen always went super hard on the costumes, so it was always a big deal. And pumpkin carving. So it was a very wonderful family, community, neighborhood activity for me growing up. The most recent one that's been, like, delightful, I just made a funny t-shirt, and then I went to see the Joker with some friends. And it was delightful, honestly.
Good. Yeah, see, you've got good Halloween memories. I'm just trying to think of mine. The
Can you
last
hear the
one...
thunder on my end?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I can also hear it on my end.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it started storming at some point.
Yeah.
Growing up, we lived, like, in town, and so, like, trick-or-treating was a way bigger thing, where it's, like, once we moved, we were, like, our house sat really far back from the road, and so it was, like, way less of a thing where you would trick-or-treat. And at that point, I was, like, in high school, and so it just wasn't going to be a thing anyways. But I believe my last Halloween before we moved, or possibly like second to last Halloween before we moved, I remember being sitting in the living room with my father watching Revenge of the Sith.
Nice.
Because I had turned 13 a few months prior and was finally allowed to see the one forbidden Star Wars movie.
Amen.
And we decided to do that, the two of us, on Halloween night. Maybe my mom was out trick-or-treating with my brothers or something. Who knows? But, yeah, Dad and I watched Revenge of the Sith.
That is delightful.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And then I'm trying to think if I have any. I don't really have any adult Halloween things. Like, I had one in, like, I had, like, maybe, like, a late high school Halloween party where I went as a clone trooper, but, like, that's, apparently all my Halloween stories are Star Wars centric, but, like, that's the extent of my Halloween. And then, yeah, I haven't Halloweened in a long time.
Oh, man. Well, you know, there are some very, as fans of fall, there are some very seasonal things about Halloween that I find quite enjoyable. So, you know, I think as a parent, you will definitely be more inclined in it, and especially if you are living in a more, I won't say urban setting, but, like, more community-driven neighborhood, that you would really get into it.
Yeah. Anyways, that's Halloween.
That's what we're gonna do about it.
That's the episode. Andrew, anything else you feel like you got to plug here at the end?
I would like to do a bonus podcast with you about not being allowed to watch Revenge of the Sith until we were 13.
Ooh, okay. No, I'd be down.
That was like,
I'd be down.
You said that and I was like, him too?
Yeah.
Because so many of my friends were allowed to watch it right away.
Right. Oh, dude, I have some great stories. I will add it to the list of bonus podcasts. Look forward to Candid Commentaries, Revenge of the Sith at some point in your future, Chalk Squad.
Hot diggity dog. I cannot wait. What about you, Dylan? You got anything to end?
I do not.
All right.
So we're going to be back in a week with episode 46, The Shepherd and the Giant. Bye, guys.
Bye.
WadFam Chalk Pod is a presentation of the Lidditz Podcast Co-op. This show is a fan podcast and has no official affiliation with Adventures in Odyssey or Focus on the Family. As such, the copyright is ours under Creative Commons. Follow the podcast at WadFam Chalk Pod on Twitter and Instagram, or email us at wadfamchalkpod@gmail.com. What Are We Gonna Do About Halloween was hosted by Dylan Weaver and Andrew Acebo and edited by Dylan Weaver. And I'm Nathan Haverstick, hoping you'll join us again next time for more of the Wad Fam Chalk Pod.